Cool. Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Carey, and this is Carl, and today we're going to be going through the first release of the GitLab for Eclipse plugin. So this release is just going to have like an empty skeleton plugin, but this is just going to prove out the release process that I've been working on and have successfully done a release inside of a fork under my personal project. So the first thing we need to do when we're doing a release of Eclipse is we're going to have to go into the project, create a new branch for making a release branch. I have an alias set up. Um, if I show what this alias is, it's just going through and creating a branch with a certain date format. And then just to make it unique in case you need multiple releases in a day, add that in. So once have a release branch, we can go through, and the first step is going to be to verify the changelog. And so in my case, I'm going to be releasing the 0.3.0 version of the plugin. And so then I'll append the dates as well. So does the 12th of the 12th. And we can empty the unreleased section. In the future, we'll probably do this through a Gradle plugin that we already use for the JetBrains plugin. And so that will automatically move over and update the version numbering appropriately. Once I've added the changelog, I'll need to go through and confirm my version numbers. So there's two locations for the version number today. And so one is build.gradle.kotlin KTS, and the other is, so we have the snapshot version here, and so we need to remove snapshot from the version number. And so that's true for the POM file, but that is also true for our um, inside of our build Gradle. So our build Gradle will build a few modules. We can see here that we have these platform dependent modules. And these platform dependent modules are going to be for the language servers, the actual server binary, which is platform specific. And we also have a host bundle. So OSGI has bundles. And so I'm creating a separate jar file for each platform. And so when we come to install the plugin, we don't have to install it's hundreds of megabytes essentially. We can just have the specific plugin. So if it's 60 megabytes for Mac, if Mac download would only be 60 megabytes for the GitLab for Eclipse. So we can see here that each of these projects has a Kotlin file as well. And so this will build the correct OSGI metadata inside of the jar. And so it's taking that and then it's just appending the binary over. So we see now, we can see that a release looks like all this is doing is adding a commit to fix the changelog. And then we're updating the version number from the snapshot version, which is Maven uses dash snapshot to denote something's not a released version. So we do the bump. Again, bumping is something we could also improve on in the future with automation, where we say, hey, if we want to do a tag release, it will automatically do the bump from snapshot to the final release version. And so I'm manually modifying the version in those two files. I've added an entry in my changelog to match that. And then I will create a commit which says as much. I'll create a merge request then. And in the merge request description, what I like to do is I like to add the changelog in for my release. Now what we have at this stage is we have the release merge request. This is where we can go in and just modify or just check the changelog makes sense and everything, just like we have for JetBrains. At this stage, then we would get an approver, an additional approver. So I'll go ahead and assign Carl. He was a trainee maintainer at the time, so I'll also assign Jean-Gabriel. So I can go ahead and get approvals for this. I'm just gonna pause the recording, or the screen share while I go and just grab Jean-Gabriel on Slack. Okay, cool. We now have an approval from Jean-Gabriel and Karl. So with this getting merged, once this merge request is complete, we can go ahead and create a tag off of this. I'm gonna wait to create the tag while the merge request is merging because we'll want to make sure the tag is referring to the version that is on main rather than the version that is inside of the merge request. Cool. So yeah, Karl, while this build is running, do you have any questions to start?
Yeah, so the process looks similar to how we release JetBrains. Um, but I think right now we're just manually updating the versions in the POM and in the Gradle build file. So I guess in the future we're probably automated with some script like how we do it in JetBrains.
Yeah, that's the plan. Cool. Yeah, we can see just for the sake of anybody who's listening, since this is a new project. For now, what we have is in merge request build, we have build and test phases, and it just goes through those jobs. And once those jobs are complete, we'll be good to go in terms of merging. So what I could do is I could open up the documentation. We have some documentation that's been deployed. And so this documentation is going to be user documentation for the Eclipse plugin. And so what it looks like then is this is just similar to how we have other editor extension documentation, but the process is what I wanted to talk about here. So for Eclipse plugins, you typically would have update site inside of Eclipse. So if I go into Eclipse then and I go to my install new software, the first thing you get is you have a list of repositories essentially, or update sites is what it's called. And that is P2, or it's a P2 repository, which is a technology we instead of Maven repository, it's a P2 repository. And so those update sites are just essentially static lists of the different files available in the dependencies for those plugins. And so there's a Eclipse marketplace and an Eclipse project updates. And so these are ones maintained by Eclipse and owned by Eclipse. But you can actually go in and add your own custom update sites. And so in the case of GitLab for Eclipse, what I've done is I've created a permalink on the latest release. So if you use permalink for latest instead of tagging a specific version, this will give you the latest release. So it'll automatically redirect you. And so then slash downloads, because I published the P2 index and the plugin jar files of the built plugin code, what we can do is we can say that this is an update site, and then it will automatically redirect us to the specific tagged release that is the latest at that time. And so when users go in and use Eclipse and then say check for updates, it will pull the latest version tag, and then it will resolve the P2 index file and all the different jar files that are associated with that latest release tag. And so this is how the release process is working for that. And then I'll go through just installing the update and pulling it in as well. Cool. So yeah, it looks like that has been merged. So if I go ahead and check out main and pull main, I can then create a 0.3.0 tag with a v prefix using semantic version. Then if I can do git push tags, origin, I'll push that tag and a tag on the uh, that exists because I tried to do a test build this morning. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and delete this from the project because we want to tag on the latest commit off main. And these are going to be protected tags as we go into production with this plugin. Okay. And so I've gone ahead and deleted the VO30 tag. And now what I should be able to do is I should be able to test pushing this again. Okay. And if we show it, we can see that that is Jean-Gabriel has merged my prepare release commit. And that's the tag that I've just pushed. And we should get a tag pipeline created. Cool. And so we can see in a tag pipeline, we have it has more steps. And so in addition to the build and testing steps that we have a publish plugin step, which will plug the jar file for the actual GitLab for Eclipse plugin. It will also, excuse me, it will also push a update site. So create the a zip file for the P2 update site. And the P2 repository again is the format instead of Maven, it uses P2. And so it creates essentially a jar or zip artifact of that update site. And the update site on the file system um, looks like this. So on the file system, that looks like an artifacts jar or content zip. So you can zip this XML up so it's a compressed file format. We also have the P2 index, which tells it where to look at. So the content jar and the artifacts jar. And then we have plugins where we upload any of our own OSGI bundles. OSGI is a standard for dependency management. So instead of using Maven, you can use OSGI. And OSGI will essentially know where to look up in the Java class path where the different Java files are available. And so if you inside of those plugins, we can then like open up the Eclipse plugin, which is the core plugin, and you can see that we have a manifest. And so the manifest then has a bundle name, and that also has a symbolic name. And the symbolic name uses like the reverse domain syntax, so com GitLab, and then we could just go vendor. We have the version information. We're using timestamps in here. Um, we do this so we can publish like hotfixes and stuff like that, but also because you can't publish a snapshot. So in theory, we could strip that for the release build and only have 022. But if we want to do snapshot or pre-release build, we have to include a dot additionally integer value as well. We can see here that there's automatic module names. So for if we want to include this as a dependency for another bundle or feature for Eclipse, we would have to give the OSGI module name. And we can see here that require bundle will tell it which OSGI dependencies to pull in from the Eclipse ecosystem. And so in this case, these are all provided by the Eclipse platform or Equinox platforms. But we could add in external dependencies in theory with this as well. And so that's built as part of the Gradle build process inside of the plugin. So we can see there's P2 deps, which is a plugin we use, which helps us resolve P2 dependencies as Maven dependencies. Um, and we can see there's some platform logic here, and we say, okay, Eclipse dependencies are declared this way, and then it pulls it from the Eclipse update site, which is a P2 repository instead of a Maven repository. Okay, and as that's going, so that deploys the update site, which creates the structure I showed on disk. So that creates this repository, and then it'll bundle that as a zip file, and then once that zip file is available, we can then publish that zip file. So this will take a few minutes for all the different builds to pass, especially code quality, which I wish code quality wasn't blocking, but we do the check beforehand. So yeah, I guess in the meantime, if you have any additional questions, Carl, happy to go over stuff.
Uh, yeah, none at the moment, but yeah, it's a lot to take.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I wanted to record it for the team, so everybody can go back over it and review it.
Yeah, I'm only familiar with how Maven works, so P2 is like completely new to me.
Yeah. P2 was extremely frustrating to use with Gradle until I found that there's a equal. There's like a EQ have a really nice plugin, and this plugin makes things much easier. There's some non-maintained things by Goomph, where we have like there's plugins to like interact with P2 repositories from Gradle, which essentially makes it look like Maven, and then you interact with it like as if it was a normal Maven. The problem is that when you're defining those OSGI dependencies, you have to have those jars available to you on your class path. And so when you build the actual like output artifact, Gradle doesn't know anything about that format or how to do it. So you have the option of, hey, I can just put all the classes into my own jar, or I have to pull in all the jars onto my class path somehow. And then if that's the case, then you're just bundling stuff that's not in a normal way for the system. And you're also going to be like inflating your dependency by like having like hundreds of megabytes instead of having a smaller jar file when possible. Speaking of which, though, like I actually had to bundle Kotlin, the Kotlin like SDK like APIs because Kotlin runtime, of course, because Kotlin is a Java language, like all the standard library, you have to like bundle the standard library as like a dependency. And so the GitLab for Eclipse plugin itself, that actually includes Kotlin as a OSGI instead of creating a separate OSGI module for it, because Maven modules aren't deployed that way by default. I just included the Kotlin runtime within our jar file. So it's considered like a fat jar if, and you probably haven't heard that term in a while because like that
Yeah.
tends to be not a way that we deploy anymore, right? With Java. So it feels like I'm going back like 15 years with how Java deployments are done. So it's been pretty funny working on this.
How big is our jar file right now?
I do not know off the top of my head. So let's see. Update site, target repository, plugins, star. Is it little h for human readable? Okay. So yeah, our jar file is less than 2 MB. And then the language server jars are like 40 megabytes each, which actually makes sense. And then
Yeah,
this one,
that's not too bad.
yeah. And then the
That's
host,
not,
no, that's good. That's good. And other like in
yeah,
some of our other projects, we have to deploy all the different like platform dependent binaries inside of our plugin. So this way we can deploy it where like if I'm installing on Mac, it only installs those two jar files, right?
yeah.
So in that case, we're at like less than 40 megabytes, so we're good to go.
Yeah, I saw that in action when I tried to install the plugin yesterday. Like it only included that specific dependency for my OS.
Yeah, for sure. And that part was let's see. Before I go into that, let's see if it's got further. Okay, cool. So publish plugin. Okay, so this piece here is like the regular Maven deploy phase, essentially. For Gradle, we use publish. One caveat I'll say is that I'm using publish to Maven local, so I can cache the artifacts inside of my build. And that is because for some reason we're not publishing some magical artifact that is needed for the P2 repository to resolve the Maven dependency. And I'm not sure why that is. And that's something we need to have a spike on later. But essentially, the way I'm doing it now, where if you run publish to Maven local, it will populate your M2 repository cache with the Maven module and the GitLab Eclipse plugin, and then all the different language server binaries. And once those are populated in your M2 cache or your M2 repository in your home directory, then the next step of running Maven clean install to build the update site Tycho repository. Once that's done, that succeeds. But what won't work though is if you're running it with if you run it without doing the publish Maven local, it doesn't work for some reason. Even though we've already published the release binaries to the GitLab package registry, for some reason the package registry seems to not have the same exact files as when you run the publish Maven local. So for some reason, the Gradle build isn't pushing some files maybe to the package registry. And so we'll have to investigate that further. But in the meantime, what I've done is inside of the runner, I've said, hey, cache the artifacts from M2 repository. So if I inside of the build plugin or inside of the publish plugin phase, if I publish that to my local cache, and then inside of the Maven job later, where I run the update repository, it will have the dependencies available to it. And so, yeah, that will be a fun one for someone to figure out. It'll probably be me at the end, and that's going to be a headache. I'm not too sure why some magical like a P2 Maven Tycho incantation isn't there. Essentially, it works if I publish it to my local repository, but for some reason I'm not pushing everything possible to the package registry. It seems from Gradle, the Gradle builds. So cool. And so you can see here that it's just going through. It does like all the common phases for generating the jar, then updating like the manifest, and then pushing to the projects.
Yeah.
Cool. And then yeah, you can see here where it actually adds my caches in. Okay. So and then I should be able to go to the deploy update site. I think it's in this order. So I think yeah, the first one's deploy. And so deploy update site. So look at the GitLab templates update site. That's where I'm actually like doing the Maven deploy. And so the Maven deploy will do a Maven release. And so that publishes to the package registry because we're pushing our plugins through. So I go in here, we go to package registry. We can see here that we have the different Maven modules published to the package registry. And so this one is the GitLab Eclipse plugin module. And so that you can then refer to this as a dependency. And then this will, in theory, this pulls from the package registry into your own project if you depend on this as a Maven module. It doesn't seem to work for some reason though. Again, because of the Gradle build not pushing some magical file that's in the repository somewhere. We can see here like this is just the actual like plugin jar file. And then same thing, we have all the different platform dependent ones, which is just a jar file which contains only, well, it contains a manifest which makes it a valid OSGI bundle. And then it contains the like the GitLab LSP binary for the like particular OS that we're running against. And then what I should also be able to do, I don't have any in this project, but I probably do in my fork, is we publish a generic package as well. And so the generic package, the benefit of this is we can publish, this is the update site published as like a static package. And then you can use the downloads. There's like a path for this where you can say like slash downloads and then point to the file. And so that essentially lets me use this as like a HTTP server if someone was trying to resolve it as update site. So I can give them like the link to my package slash downloads, and then they'll pull the P2 file first, and then it'll know based on that that everything else is relative, and that's where it pulls the jars and the other dependencies from. And so that will happen as part of the next phase. So, yep, so our deploy finished. So we published all the Maven artifacts to the right place. And now that that's done, the published Eclipse repository will run. And so publish Eclipse repository takes it a step further where it runs this publish to GitLab. And then publish to GitLab is publishing that generic package, and then it creates a new release under the releases in the project. And then finally, it goes through and it creates this asset links file. And asset links is a link to that generic package release for the different files that need to be made available. And so if I go to release, I don't have it exactly in this project. Um, let's see if I have one in my downloads. Don't have the assets links file right now, but I can just show you what the format is essentially. Actually, I can just show you release probably. So if I go to my fork of the project and I go to release, we can see here that what the asset links is essentially this list of other links. And then these other links are all referring to, if you see the like bottom left of my screen, it's referring to the slash downloads artifacts, slash downloads plugins. It refers to the generic package registry. And then when you click those, it redirects you, or sorry, when you click it, it redirects you to the generic package registry. But the benefit is that you get the slash downloads link. So you can refer to releases slash VO2.7 dash slash downloads forward slash as an update site itself. And then because there's a special release, instead of using the tag, you can say permalink slash latest. You can always use that one for like the latest stable releases, which is sort of a benefit. I'm thinking that I think that makes sense, like having our own GitLab releases, and then we can do like stable releases there. But if we want to in the future, if we start publishing to the Eclipse marketplace, we could potentially do something where we have like a subpath under the the permalink slash latest, where we have like slash download slash beta, and then under that we have a different update site repository downloaded into this release. And that way we would be able to have like an additional path that's like hard linked. Otherwise, we just direct users to say, hey, like put the specific version you want to download. But that makes it harder to have like a beta channel available. So I like the idea of like putting it under the like release. Okay. We can see here it's publishing all the different files to the release. Save the assets links. Cool. So that succeeded. Everything got pushed up. And then finally, what we have is this release job. And the release job uses what the release job does is it uses the GitLab CLI to create a release. And so that will actually create the release. It will associate it with the asset links. It will add the changelog to the release. Okay. We can see it's adding asset links. So now if I go into our project and ask for our releases, we should see our first successful release. So we can see that it uploaded the entire changelog file. And so we'll want to do something where it actually strips back only the specific entry, but it's still pretty cool seeing this. So cool. And then what I should be able to do then is I should be able to say permalink latest downloads, and I should be able to use that as an update site as noted in the documentation. And so I'll try that. So actually, if I follow the docs step by step, we see that the first thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to add the stable release or like the GitLab releases update site. So I'll go ahead and follow the docs for that. If I apply and close, if I try to install new software now, I have to select the module, and then I can see that we now have GitLab available. So we can see all the different things in our environment, all the different ones available, but we can use this show only applicable software. And then if we expand things, we should see there's only the Mac Arch binary one for me now. So I can then install those manually, or I can select the whole thing. In this case, I have 3 items selected, so I know I don't have the other binaries installed. So we should be good here. It shouldn't warn me about anything. And if it did warn me, that'll be a interesting thing. Cool. So yeah, no warnings. If you accidentally select another platform, you get a warning saying it will fix. It'll say, hey, we're removing Windows from this because it doesn't apply to your environment. Cool. So we can see here all the bundle IDs that are used to like declare our dependencies are there. We can say finish, and then it's going to install the software. And then once it's installed the jars, yeah. So because we don't do signing right now, we get this unsigned. We can see those 3 though, so I'll trust these 3 because I'm the one who built them. We can go ahead and restart. And what we should have is we should have the ability to like go and find the Duo settings. So if we go here, we now have GitLab. And so it's uses secure storage to store the personal access token. And so it will prompt you if you don't select always allow. This is a reminder for the user experience for folks. but you can just say always allow, and you won't get prompted every time. Um, cool. So we can see here, there's no access token by default. We can add access token and apply it though, and then we can close it. And at that stage, then we should be able to open up the GitLab Duo web view. So we can see here, we have this web view. Right now, it's just going to show hello world. But that is the first release of the plugin. And if you want to install the GitLab for Eclipse plugin and get hello world today, you can do so. Thanks, Joel.